friends, to Max Q Barbecue. My name is Craig, and we have a special treat for you today. Today, we're here with gourmet chef Collette, and we're going to be doing Tyler Florence's The Ultimate Beef Wellington with our friend Collette. Collette, tell us what we're going to do to get started here.
Okay, well, first of all, we're going to do the Duxelles, which we've already ground up the main ingredients: mushrooms, shallots, garlic, and thyme. So now we're going to turn it on medium-high heat. We have 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and we have 2 tablespoons of butter. So we're going to simmer that.
Salted or unsalted?
Unsalted.
Unsalted butter.
Yes, unsalted butter. So we let that heat up, and then we're going to put the Duxelles, the raw, in and cook it off until there's no moisture left.
We're here with Collette, and she's going to show us how she prepares the Duxelles, which is our mushroom stuffing. Collette, how do you make this mushroom stuffing for our beef Wellington?
First, you start off with white mushrooms, 3 packs of white mushrooms. Then you have 2 shallots that you chop up, and you have 2 cloves of garlic that you chop up, and then you also have leaves of thyme. And this is the raw product, and in here, this is what it'll look like once it's ground in a food processor.
So there you have it, folks. That's how we prepare the Duxelles, and I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but Chef Collette over here is French. So how do we say that again?
Duxelles.
Duxelles. Thank you, Collette. Well, you're ready. You're pouring in the mushrooms and shallots and garlic and
yep, the mushroom mix, and we are going to saute this down. We're going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. About a teaspoon of each. And we're going to keep stirring this until all the liquid evaporates out of it.
Okay, friends, it's been about 30 minutes since we put the mushrooms and shallots in the saucepan that we've been trying to dehydrate. And so we just about got all the moisture cooked out of it. It's nice and dry. So what do we do next, Collette?
We pull it off of the heat and let it cool down. And then we'll use it in our recipe. It has to cool down first.
Now this is, by the way, just give you a little hint of what she means by using it in a recipe. This is what we're going to wrap our beef in before we put our pastry, what kind of pastry? Our puff pastry or something?
Pastry.
Our puff pastry, wrap it in a puff pastry and before we cook it in the oven. So this is our Duxelles, and it's mostly mushrooms, so it's pretty cool. So we're gonna let this cool off. Now we don't flame this, do we? Okay, we don't flame this, but we got some treats ahead coming up for you, so stay tuned. For today's beef Wellington, we're gonna start with a whole beef tenderloin. And we're going to cut from this beef tenderloin a 3-pound center cut section to make our beef Wellington, the beef for our beef Wellington. Let's get this package opened up and let's start trimming up our tenderloin for today. We've got some paper towels here that we're going to use to dry it off. And while we're looking at this, you can see that this whole tenderloin is actually made up of 2 muscles. The large muscle here, that is the part that we're going to be center cutting for our Chateaubriand filet for our cook today, is actually called the psoas major, and attaches basically from the hip of the cow back all the way up to the rib cage. And this other little muscle over here, which is commonly referred to as the chain, is actually the psoas minor. So we're going to start by trimming off this fascia and tissue between the 2 muscles and separating them. And they come together right here, and we're just gonna cut right along that muscle and remove it. We'll cut this up for later, and we'll use this to make some hors d'oeuvres and some other fancy pieces of meat just to sample on. Now we're gonna take this part of the psoas major right here at the base, and we're gonna separate it along this fat seam, or fascial seam, and so that we can get down to the beef tenderloin that we want. So here we go, cutting down through here and removing this portion. Got those separated. Put that back on our table. this is our beef tenderloin. Now what we need to do is we want to remove this ligament here. This is going to be, it's actually a tendon. It's connected to the muscle. We need to separate that silver skin and that ligament because that's going to be real hard and chewy, and we don't want real hard and chewy inside of our beef Wellington. You're laying out the prosciutto in your slices of prosciutto.
Right.
And then you're going to, this is what's going to cover the Duxelles, and I'm butchering that, as we wrap it around our tenderloin. Is that correct? Okay.
You're going to put the mushroom mixture on top of the prosciutto, then the seared tenderloin will go on top of that, and then we're going to wrap it
in our puff pastry, and then we'll place it in the oven to cook it.
Yes.
All righty, stay tuned, folks. This is going to be good. Okay, this is our shingled prosciutto, and we're going to take this shingled prosciutto, and we're going to pack our Duxelles, or our mushroom stuffing, inside of this and layer it between that and our charred or grilled tenderloin, Chateaubriand. This is going to be awesome. It's looking beautiful. All right, friends, we're in Chef Collette's kitchen here, and she's heating up her cast iron skillet. What do you call this pot or skillet? Colette, is there a paella pan? And she's got some olive oil in here, and we're getting ready to take our tenderloin, which we trimmed earlier, which of course I didn't show you, but we tied it off to keep it together. So she's going to put some olive oil on it. Right now she's painting it down with some olive oil. She's going to season it with salt, pepper. Anything else?
No,
just salt and pepper. It's just straight salt and pepper. Just like good old Texas barbecue, folks. Straight salt and pepper. And then we're going to brown this thing. And then after we brown it, then we're going to do the wrapping and putting it in the puff pastry and then baking it before we eat it. And now most of you are saying, well, you know, this ain't quite barbecue. But let me tell you, we're cooking good old American beef here, and this is about as American as you can get, but it's barbecue with a special twist. Okay, Chef Collette has now taken our Chateaubriand and has placed it in her paella pan, which is cast iron, which means it's going to really hold the heat quite well. And we're going to brown this piece of meat. And remember, when we brown a piece of meat, we have the Maillard reaction. So it's about, it occurs around 280 degrees. But that browning is what caramelizes the amino acids so that they absorb and connect with the sugars. But she's seasoning it. You can see that she has coated it with some black pepper and a little bit of salt. But the main thing that we're trying to do with this skillet is we want to brown this piece of meat and bring those flavors out. Because the whole idea of this beef Wellington is those layers of different flavors. All right, our friend Chef Collette is actually browning the ends and searing the ends of our Chateaubriand, which is a center cut filet mignon. So she's got it in the onion. I want to see how brown. Look at that browning of that end. Now that Maillard reaction, releasing all those sugars and caramelizing those sugars. And now she's doing the other end there. So this is going to be an awesome piece of meat. Now, this is not cooking the meat. This is only browning the outside. So it's going to be very rare. But it's going to be awesome when we cook it. All right, Chef Collette is placing our Duxelles over our shingled prosciutto. This is our mushroom and shallots that we're going to use sort of our seasoning or stuffing that's going to go around our beef Wellington. And she's spreading it out like a pate over our shingled prosciutto.
Correct.
And then we're going to take our beef tenderloin off of the grill after we sear the outside of it, and we're going to wrap it in this and then wrap it in our puffed pastry before we place it in the oven to bake it. So our mouths are just watering with all the smells and aromas in this kitchen. This is an amazing kitchen, by the way. This is her kitchen. It's a commercial kitchen. It is really set up to just do about any kind of gourmet cooking event, show, training event, or anything. It's just amazing and awesome. And it also happens to be in her home, but it is amazing. Chef Collette is now taking some of the leaves of the thyme branches. You can actually strip the leaves off so we don't have those harsh or woody stems. It's just the leaves, and she fragrance up the Duxelles with some fresh thyme. Now, I love some fresh thyme. Fresh thyme on beef is just an amazing pairing. So I love the thyme and the rosemary on my Baltimore pit beef. This is just going to be an amazing layer of flavor to go with our beef Wellington. Now she's throwing a little salt with that. She's just
Salt and pepper.
pinching off some salt and just adding it across. Just a nice healthy coat of salt on the thyme and on the Duxelles. And I believe she's got some mustard. And what else do you have?
We're going to put the mustard on the meat.
We're going to take, we have some granular mustard, which we're going to take and we're going to rub that on top of our, over our Chateaubriand that has been seared.
Yes.
And then what's the other yellow?
That is an egg wash that's going to seal up the puff pastry.
Okay, so the egg wash goes on after we put the puff pastry on it.
Right.
And I have the box for the puff pastry right here in front of us. She's using the 4 Pastry Kitchen's puff pastry. So you see she's taking the mustard and she's rubbing that in, almost like a mustard smear, like I do with the pastrami and my briskets. And she's rubbing that down over our Chateaubriand. She's laying that onto our prosciutto and Duxelles, and I'll get that pronunciation right here one of these days. And continue to make sure it wraps all the way around our filet mignon.
And we have to cut the strings off.
We have to remove the strings that we used while we had tied it. It looks like we had tied it with cotton string or butcher's twine. Now this is to make sure it retains its round shape as we're searing it. And as we're searing it, of course, the meat's going to shrink and draw up, but we wanted it to retain its shape. So she's having to cut those strings off that we put on earlier. And you can see she's lifting them up and then snipping off by the knives, by the knots, and removing the strings. And there's only 4 strings, so it does not take too long to get this off. But we certainly wouldn't want anybody to bite into a cotton string. But what an amazing dish we're preparing for you tonight.
Okay.
Chef Collette says, now this is the tricky part. By the way, there's a layer of clear plastic wrap laying down on her cutting board underneath the prosciutto. So she's using the clear plastic wrap to help her lift the prosciutto and pull it around the Chateaubriand, otherwise known as the filet mignon, and wrap that around.
All right, so we're going to have to put another layer up here because the Chateaubriand is so large.
So we have a pretty thick filet. There's a story behind that, and I'll tell you in some future episode. But anyway, our filet today is a very large filet. So our
rest of the Duxelles on top.
So our prosciutto is not long enough to wrap all the way around. So we're going to have to double wrap our Chateaubriand. So we're going to put a little bit of layer on the top of our Duxelles, which is our reduced mushroom and shallot mixture. And then we're going to lay our prosciutto slices, and we're going to shingle it like we did before, so that when we can completely encapsulate our Chateaubriand, or filet, it's actually, the Chateaubriand is the term used for a center cut filet. And that way we'll have a complete wrap when we're done, before we put the puff pastry on it.
This is our wrapped prosciutto wrapped beef tenderloin, and we are now placing it into the freezer for a short period of time to cool it down and firm it up so that it'll be easier to handle in the puff pastry.
Okay folks, we have our Chateaubriand filet mignon wrapped in the freezer, firming up. And now Chef Collette is making a green peppercorn sauce, which we're going to put over our beef Wellington. So she's starting with our paella pan that has
the same pan that has the drippings from the beef in it.
So this is the pan we use to brown our beef. So you can see we got some beef juice in there, we got some of the browning and some of that caramelized meat and protein in there, so it's got a lot of flavor in this pan. Yes. And then she's going to add some additional seasonings to this.
We're going to add shallots.
She's got her shallots here, and then her pods of garlic.
Yes, 3 crushed pods of garlic.
I wish you guys were here. The kitchen smells just absolutely amazing. But I wish I could figure out how to transmit those smells from over YouTube. Okay, she's getting some thyme and some, is it leaves or sprigs? She's grabbing some sprigs of thyme to add to our mixture here.
Take them out
Boy, you know, I love thyme. I love rosemary. Those are some of my favorite herbals. And she's adding them. Oh my God, the flavors and smells are just, well, I shouldn't use that word, but they're amazing. Also, we're going to add some other things to our mixture here, which she'll talk about here a little bit. But you notice we have some green peppercorns.
Yes.
We have some beef broth, some heavy whipping cream, and the good stuff, our brandy, and then we have some coarse mustard. So all of this is going to go into making our sauce. Woo, man. C'est bon. This won't be really good. And c'est bon is really appropriate because we are in Louisiana doing some Louisiana cooking. And I apologize if the sands and the vents are making too much noise, but it is just a beautiful kitchen and a beautiful cook. Woo! Bam! That's awesome. And then what do we do next?
We return it to the heat, and we add our beef broth, and we reduce the broth down by half.
Chef Collette, what is that French term for laying out all our ingredients?
Or putting everything in place.
Putting everything in place.
Mise en scène.
Mise en scène. Chef Collette is reducing the green peppercorn sauce. So here we have our green pepper sauce. Green peppercorn sauce, and we're straining out the liquid and getting the solids out before we add our cream and our other ingredients to make our sauce. Okay, we're now pouring our strained liquid back into our paella cast iron pan. Now the great thing about cast iron, remember cast iron holds heat, so it doesn't cool down real quick, which means it holds a nice steady temperature when you're cooking. Before we add our other ingredients, our whipping cream and our green peppercorns and our mustard and our shallots. So you got a lot more, you got some virgin olive oil, you've got some balsamic vinegar, and some coconut avocado cooking oil. Do we need to use those? Are we going to add those to our sauce? No, those are not going in our sauce. So just the whipping cream and our peppercorn and our mustard.
Yes, now we're going to add our cream.
Okay.
We're going to add our 2 cups of cream.
So we're going to be reducing it, which we're going to be steaming off a lot of the liquids and actually thickening this up, right?
Yes, correct. Before we add our peppercorns.
And I imagine we got to be careful not to scorch it or give it any adverse flavors as we're prepping it.
Correct.
And all of this happens before we add our green peppercorns. Now our green peppercorns were prepped before we started the video.
We strained them out of the brine.
They come packed in a brine, which we've strained off.
Yes, we strained that off. And these will go in once this liquid is reduced by half.
Awesome.
And we will add the green peppercorns. For the beef Wellington, we rolled it out.
Do you put any oil or anything, or just flour?
Just flour.
Just
flour on the puff pastry.
On the
and
puff
we're getting
pastry.
ready to unroll our beef Wellington and place it in the puff pastry.
Now our beef Wellington has been in the freezer firming up so that it's nice and firm, so that our Duxelles and our prosciutto doesn't come unwrapped as we're trying to process this onto our puff pastry.
Now we're going to take our chilled tenderloin out. You can either unwrap it or cut it off. Cut the plastic off. What we're going to do is take it and we are going to turn it over right in the middle.
Like a log of meat.
Like a log of meat.
Wrapped in prosciutto.
And what you do is you fold one side up, you brush it with this egg yolk mixture, which we had.
So this is just the egg yolk separated from the egg whites. You throw away the egg whites and just keep the yolk.
Well, actually, it's 2 whole eggs.
It's 2 whole eggs. Now you mix the egg white, scramble it together.
Yeah,
so it's a combination.
Mixed. It's mixed together. Then you're pulling this over to seal it.
So you're leaving the whites, which is actually the protein portion of the egg, which will actually kind of form a glue or a binder to hold the pastry together.
Correct.
So will these kind of open up and give it sort of a nice, like a sourdough bread when it rises, it opens up and it gives you a little bit of a pattern on it, which really should make it very appealing.
And then you paint it with your egg wash, which actually this is just eggs. We don't have any water in here. Give it a glaze.
And so this is a gloss kind of the pastry, and give it a little bit of a shell type of finish.
Yes.
Wow, that's gonna be amazing.
Like I said, you can actually decorate it.
Now, have you ever done this in your pizza oven? Or I'm thinking this might be just kind of a perfect thing to throw in a pizza oven.
After your pizzas are done, when you have a regulated temperature, that's the problem with cooking on wood, is having a regulated, steady temperature. Now we put it in our 425 degree oven for 40 minutes.
And that's a pretty hot oven, you know, relative to cooking meats or briskets or anything like that.
Yes.
But it's a pretty normal oven temperature for cooking pastries. Alrighty, and how many minutes are we gonna have to wait before we're able to slice into this? Or
I believe it is 40 to 45 minutes.
40 to 45 minutes, so it's gonna cook in there 425. And then do we have to rest it after we cooked it?
Not really.
Not really, so when we come out of the oven, we're gonna be ready to serve it?
Well, you let it set for a couple minutes and then it is ready to slice.
Alrighty folks, it's gonna be fun. So see you back in about an hour when we're pulling it out of the oven, or 45 minutes, whichever comes first. All right, Chef Collette has just poured the green peppercorns into our reduction, our cream reduction, with our braising solution and our capers and garlic, and continue to cook it down to get our sauce to go over our beef Wellington. It looks amazing, and you know what? It must smell amazing as well, but you can't smell it because you're on YouTube. But those of us that are on site are just having an amazing olfactory experience. That's a fancy word to describe smelling experience. Alrighty, see you back in a few minutes. Okay, the alarm is going off. It's been 45 minutes since we put our beef into the oven. And Chef Collette is over here going to remove our beef from the oven. Let's see what it looks like as our first look. Oh my God, has that just changed? Whoa. Look how beautiful that is. That is amazing. Okay, look at that. Is that not gorgeous? Look at how the dough, the puff pastry dough has browned up. And man, that is absolutely gorgeous. Man, we're gonna have a party tonight. And here's our sauce over here. We're about to decant that and put it in our serving dish. See what it looks like on the inside here.
Oh, there you go, Amy.
Our beef Wellington.
But that is a well done in for Amy.
Yes.
Okay.
Check this out. Look at the juices rolling out of that beef Wellington. Woo! Stacey Ball.
Oh, beautiful.
We're here with our peppercorn sauce. I'm going deep here because I want to get those green peppercorns out. Bringing them over.
Like Amy, I'm going for the end. This end is perfect.
Folks, that's what it looks like plated. Sorry you can't smell it or taste it, but it is amazing. The beef tenderloin was so tender, and the flavor profile was absolutely amazing. So this is just one, if you want to do an eloquent beef dish, this is definitely one to try. It's a little bit of work putting it together, but man, the outcome is amazing. And if you want to put a little barbecue flair to it, you could probably sear the beef on your grill and then put a little smoke flavor to it. And I think that might just add that special touch to make it your own. So thanks for watching. Have a great evening. Well, we finished off our first slice, and Darwin and I are back in here for seconds. That is absolutely beautiful. It is so tender. It's melt in your mouth. Delicious. So we're coming back for more. Well, I hope you enjoyed our video today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click subscribe and come back next week for a new video that we haven't decided what was going to be yet.